Hello. Well, I'm slightly the worse for wear just now, but nevertheless, I'm going to try and go ahead with this video. And this is an important message to all of you doing your dissertation right now. I want to talk about the shape of your dissertation. You obviously you realise that it's going to be in several chapters. So there will be an abstract, an introduction, a literature review, a methodology chapter, then some kind of results emerging from your legwork, and then there'll be a discussion of those results. So everybody knows about this. What I want to talk about in terms of shape, though, is the scope of each section of your dissertation. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, when you are writing this document, you will need to have it address several people, a small audience of about 3 examiners. But I think you should think about addressing your dissertation to an audience of 5 or 10 people. That is to say, the examiners who are going to read it, plus, shall we say, an educated audience, people who might be interested, who perhaps are from, a broadsheet newspaper or something like that, who are going to report your study. Now, in order to accommodate and to speak to all of these people, you need to provide a fairly broad scope at the start. You need to say what this dissertation is about in terms understandable by the general public, what kind of issues it's addressing, issues at their level, issues at the level of people who are going to be reading this, will be an interested public. And that sets out the terms of what it is that you're doing. It may be that your work is related to current policy issues, social policy issues. It may be that you're addressing issues of current national panic about something. So you need to highlight these in the broadest terms at the beginning of your introduction, but also, importantly, your literature review. Because that will then provide the rationale of the study that you intend to do, you intend to pursue. You then begin from this kind of broad outline to narrow the scope. You then need to actually say, well, what kind of areas of social science have existing research in it that might be relevant to addressing those issues or questions that I've just been referring to. So these might be journal articles or books or other discussions and debates that have taken place within academia and that address those specific questions. And you want to tell us what kinds of areas of exploration, what kind of content that this work contains. So you need to kind of summarize and say, well, Smith's written a book about this, Jones has written a book about this, Bloggs has written several articles about this, and they seem to be addressing these kinds of questions in the following kind of way. So that gives us an idea about how the field of your study is currently being kind of scoped by academics. You then need to narrow it down even further. Given the range of questions that you are specifically interested in, you want to say, well, what's coming out of that academic literature that I'm particularly interested in? And then you're going to focus on an even narrower range of studies which are much more directly related to what it is that you're doing. And you then want to go into critical mode and look at the assumptions, the theoretical frameworks being used by those other researchers. And you want to, perhaps discuss them, and critique them. You know, what are their assumptions? What are their frameworks? What are their research methodologies? This kind of thing. And you want to provide us with some kind of account of those studies which show how you are critically addressing them. Because ultimately, you, after your literature review has finished, you will want to, at the end, tell us precisely what research questions you have in very, very specific terms. So if you kind of go back to the scoping idea, the scoping is narrowing down now. So we're looking at a number of studies that you've particularly selected, which you're going to sort of look at in some detail. And from that research, you are going to narrow that down even further until you come to your own set of research questions that you're going to explore. And when you get to those research questions, the reader, that is your audience, will be able to see how you derived your research questions from that literature review that you have just done. Okay, now I'm going to send all of you a copy of a paper, an article, which does this absolutely perfectly. So you'll have an example of a piece of research where I would give the title, the abstract of this research, and the literature review 100%. Absolutely perfect. Let me just carry on, though, to give you the picture of the whole dissertation, because if you've got your research questions, your very, very specific ones, at the end of your literature review, which have been arrived at by your analysis of the existing literature, you then turn to the methodology. And what your methodology will then do is say, look, I've got these research questions. This is exactly how I'm going to answer them. This is how I'm going to define the terms in them. And here are the methods I'm going to use to explore those things. And this method of exploration, these methods I'm going to use to answer my questions, will give me the following kinds of results. This is what the kind of results would look like once I've done my methodology. And of course, your methodology also contains, what you did, how you did it, sampling frames, and all the usual kinds of things. Good. Okay, then you report your results. So we're now moving from research questions to your results, and you start to elaborate and explain what you found. But then you move into the discussion realm, and you interpret your results. You're interpreting the results more broadly, telling us how they relate to the literature which you reviewed in the literature review, and then broadly speaking again, how those results and your interpretations of those results contribute to the field that you identified in the literature review. So if you think about it, your dissertation, the shape of its content runs very much like a bow tie. It starts broadly, gets very narrow, till it gets to your research questions and results, and then begins to expand again in the discussion. So hopefully you've understood that. Now the paper that I'm going to be sending you has 100% for its wonderful literature review. How to do a critical review of literature, how to start off broadly, how to narrow, how to derive research questions from it, and so on. The methodology isn't so good. So I only give the methodology in this particular paper about 65% or something like that. So it's not quite good enough, for us, but you can at least see what's going on. But then you've got the results, and then you've got the discussion, which again are quite good in this paper. So hopefully you've understood that. Hopefully you will now know what to look out for in this paper I'm sending you, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Book one of the appointment slots in the doodle poll that I've sent. It's not necessary that you do, but those are the only available slots I have left for the semester now, until December, and then I've got a couple more shorter slots for anyone that needs it in the final panic before the end of term. Okay, so good. Well, I look forward to hearing from you at some point, and I'm going to go and get a cup of coffee now.